The candles were already half melted by the time she walked in. Not the kind you find in scented glass jars from the drugstore. No, these were restaurant candles. Tall, thin, and flickering like they knew the night would burn down slowly. Their golden light pooled across the white tablecloth like something trying to stay soft. I remember the smell of caramel on my fingers, sticky from the dessert I'd barely touched, and the laughter, too loud, too practiced, especially from him. My name is Lila. I'm 38 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. The table stretched nearly the whole length of the restaurant's private room, polished oak framed with dark curtains that kept the rest of the place out. 12 of us, maybe 13 if you counted the server who kept re-pouring wine like she was afraid to stop. Mason sat near the center, glowing with that brand of birthday confidence men get when they think the night belongs to them. His co-workers clustered around, their laughter shaped like performance applause. His sister, already 2 margaritas deep, was half perched on the edge of her chair, glittery nails flashing whenever she gestured. And me, I was tucked between a bottle of red wine and the gift I'd spent too much time picking out, a monogrammed watch, his initials engraved on the back, the kind of understated luxury that photographs well. Wrapped in navy blue tissue and sealed in a box from that overpriced boutique downtown, the one that makes everything smell faintly of leather and bergamot. I'd even ironed the ribbon before tying it. My plan was simple. After dessert, I'd give it to him, make a small toast, smile like I still believed everything was okay. But life, as it turns out, doesn't wait for dessert. The hostess appeared at the edge of the table, slim, nervous, holding her order pad like a shield. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but caring. "There's someone here who says she was invited?" Heads turned. Mason frowned, confused. His coworker Ben muttered something under his breath, and then we heard them. The heels, sharp, deliberate, slow, not hesitant. The kind of click that's meant to be heard. Every step a statement. I turned just in time to see her. She cut across the dining room like she'd choreographed the moment. A backless black dress, hair pinned high, a matte black gift box in one hand tied with a satin ribbon that caught the candlelight. She didn't glance around or hesitate near the tables. She walked straight toward us, toward him, like the restaurant itself had been waiting for her cue. His ex, the one who moved to California for a fresh start, the one who, according to him, still sends weird emails sometimes, but nothing serious. The one he hadn't spoken to in over a year. The words replayed in my head like subtitles, slow and mocking. I sat frozen, caramel still on my fingertips, fork mid-air, catching the light like an accusation. She stopped beside him, and for a heartbeat the entire table seemed to exhale. Her perfume reached me first, something expensive and bitter, orange blossom layered with smoke. Her voice followed, smooth and quiet and too sweet. "Happy birthday, Mason," she said. "I thought you should have this." Then she placed the gift on the table. Not in front of him, in front of me. And before anyone could move, before I could even decide how to breathe, she untied the ribbon. The satin slid across the linen like silk water, soundless and deliberate. Inside was a crisp white envelope, heavy paper, the kind used for wedding invitations or legal documents, thick enough to suggest importance. My full name was written across the front. Neat, intimate, familiar. Lila Dawn Shepherd. The handwriting made something in my chest shift. The room paused. A couple at the next table glanced over, sensing drama. One of Mason's coworkers stifled a laugh, or maybe a gasp. Someone's phone camera clicked, that automatic reflex people have when something scandalous breaks the surface of a calm evening. I could feel heat crawl up my throat. Mason's jaw tensed. His hand reached halfway across the table, then stopped midair, like even he didn't know whether to grab the envelope or hide it. "What is this?" I asked. She smiled, just barely, a surgical little curve. "You'll figure it out," she said. Then she turned, heels clicking again, sharp, rhythmic, final. The door closed behind her with a soft thud that felt louder than the music. No one followed her, not even Mason. The silence left behind was its own performance. I reached into the box. There wasn't just the envelope. There was also a folded receipt, still warm like it had just come from someone's pocket. I slipped it into my clutch before anyone noticed. The envelope was sealed with a small gold sticker embossed with initials. MS, his initials. He had sealed it. My name, written in his handwriting, not hers. I didn't open it. Not yet. Mason sat motionless. The color had drained from his face, not red with guilt, but white, hollow, as if some part of him had already fled. His sister broke the silence first. Is this some kind of joke? I don't know what she's doing, Mason said quickly, voice cracking, defensive, breathless. But I wasn't looking at him anymore. I was looking at the card, at the faint smudge across one corner, a thumbprint maybe, blurred before the ink dried, at the small drop of coffee staining the edge of the receipt I'd hidden. She'd had coffee before this. She was calm, measured. This wasn't a tantrum or a revenge stunt. This was planning, and Mason knew it. He was staring at the envelope like it might detonate. Should I open it? I asked quietly. His lips parted, but nothing came out. The hostess hovered nearby, unsure if she should rescue or retreat. A waiter stood frozen with a tray of espresso cups, the silver spoons trembling. Somewhere in the corner, a champagne cork popped from another table, absurdly loud in the silence. I smiled, not out of joy, out of survival. Something in me had gone cold, an arctic calm that replaced confusion with calculation. The envelope caught the candlelight again, and that's when I saw it, a faint silver brand logo embossed on the back. The same logo printed on the tissue paper of Mason's birthday gift. Same boutique, same purchase window. I'd been there last Tuesday, which meant she had too, with him, not long ago. The receipt in my clutch would tell me how recent. I folded the envelope, placed it gently back into the box, and pushed it aside. Let's finish dessert, I said. Mason flinched. His fork clattered against the plate. No one spoke. Even his sister stopped mid-sip. I didn't ask for an explanation, didn't make a scene, because this wasn't the place, and he wasn't worth the performance. Not yet. In the glass window beside us, I saw our reflections. 12 people frozen mid-party, the candles trembling in their wax pools, Mason's expression caught between fear and disbelief. And I understood something. This wasn't about a gift, it was a message. And the only question now was who had written it, and why? Outside, through the frosted glass, I could see the streetlights blur against the drizzle starting to fall. The night went on around us. Laughter from other tables, the hum of a birthday song from another room. But at ours, time had fractured. I rested my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. The caramel on my fingertips had hardened, tacky and cold. Mason shifted beside me, clearing his throat, trying to pretend control. Lila, he started, voice low. It's not what it looks like. I tilted my head, studying him. Then what is it? He hesitated, eyes darting, calculating. She's unstable. She probably... I cut him off. She had your initials engraved on a seal. He blinked. That's not something unstable people do. I continued softly. That's something meticulous people do. Across the table, his sister muttered, "Oh my God," under her breath, then pushed her margarita aside. The others stared anywhere but at us. I watched his hands, the slight tremor in his right one, the twitch of a jaw muscle he didn't realize I could see. He was unraveling in real time, and all I could think was how quiet the restaurant felt now, how the candlelight made the silverware glow like warning signs. He reached for my hand. "Lila, please." I pulled it away, slowly. "Save it," I said. Then, with a calm I didn't recognize, I picked up my water glass, took a sip, and leaned back. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing answers. I was watching them arrive. That night, I couldn't sleep. The restaurant smell clung to my hair. Butter, rosemary, wine, the kind that sinks into you even after you've showered. I lay in bed watching the ceiling fan, the blades cutting the dark into slow slices. His breathing beside me was too even, too careful. The kind of breathing people practice when they're trying not to be noticed. When he rolled over, pretending to sleep, I knew. I moved like a shadow, barefoot, listening for the floorboard that always creaked in the hall. It didn't. Luck or habit, both felt dangerous in that silence. The gift box waited on my dresser where I'd left it, ribbon coiled like a question I wasn't ready to ask. I lifted the lid and pulled out the receipt I'd slipped inside. Hollow and crane-fine gifts, dated last Friday, the same day he'd said he was working late. Dates tell a story, so do signatures. Paid by Mason S. It wasn't initials this time. It was his whole name, printed, deliberate. And in the note field, where most people scrawl thanks or ignore it entirely, someone had written a single word in blue ink: duplicate. Duplicate. I pressed my thumb against the paper as if that would make it breathe. Duplicate meant there was more than one. 2 boxes, 2 envelopes, 2 staged moments. I could feel the shape of the plan like a bruise already forming. In the dim light, I tore open the envelope. Inside was a folded card, the kind you slip into a present, thick paper that makes your fingers slow down. It smelled faintly of coffee and the floral vanilla she always wore. The handwriting was his. For everything you deserved but never received. M. My lungs emptied like someone had taken a breath out of me. The sentence landed exactly the way it had last year in his toasted words. Then and now, the phrase had been a small, private weapon. Before, it felt tender. Now it felt rehearsed, staged, copied. I slid the card back into the box as if it might bite and switched off the lamp. The room felt smaller, the fan a metronome counting off the beats of something else. Outside, Charlotte slept under a wet sky. Rain started up against the window, soft at first, then thicker against the glass. A siren swelled in the distance and receded, the city's heartbeat going on without regard for what was unraveling in my house. Morning found me pretending to be ordinary. Coffee, the same shirt I always reach for, the practiced smile you'd wear when you needed people to believe you were fine. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work, breath warm, a question in his eyes he didn't ask. I watched him go, his figure small through the front window, and felt my pulse tighten into a plan. I started with what was easiest, our shared credit card portal. The transaction spilled down the page like a timeline of excuses. Hollow and Crane, Parsons Cafe, Royalton Hotel, 2 nights, check-in Friday. Check-out, Sunday morning, the weekend he claimed he was tied up at the office while I drove to Asheville to see my sister. The printer in the office coughed and produced the page, hot and smelling faintly of toner. I drove to the boutique on a breath I didn't know I had. The bell over the door chimed like a small confession. The clerk looked up and recognized me the way people recognize customers who buy expensive things and expect service in return. "Oh," she said, bright as sugar, "you're Mrs. Shepherd. We were wondering if your husband got the second box okay." The words landed like a slap. I kept my face smooth. "Second box?" I asked. She nodded, smoothing a cloth over the glass counter like it was a costume she had to keep perfect. He wanted a backup just in case the engraving came out wrong. He was particular about matching them perfectly. "Matching them?" I echoed, tasting the word. "Yes, the initials." He said it needed to be, she searched for the word, hesitant. "Sentimental. One for his wife and one for a friend. It was very sweet." Sweet. My knuckles went white around my purse strap. The boutique smelled of leather polish and citrus and the faint trace of the perfume my ex had worn in the card. I left before the clerk could add anything else. Outside, rain streaked the glass of the storefront. My reflection looked unfamiliar, blurred by the streaks. I sat in the car with the engine off and let the wet weight of it settle over me. Duplicate, friend, backup. The words jammed together and rearranged themselves into a shape I couldn't ignore. I had to know more. If he had bought a second box, there would be records beyond a receipt. Emails, reservations, confirmations. He was careless in places he thought would never be checked. Anna's office was a half-hour away, tucked into a co-working floor with exposed brick and too many succulents. She answered on the second ring. We used to work together in marketing. She'd built a life out of systems and log files and had a side business in digital forensics. When I told her everything, she didn't gasp. She didn't reach for the moral high ground. She made a plan. "If he's that sloppy," Anna said, pen tapping her pad, "he's left a trail. Do you still have access to his iCloud?" "He thinks I don't," I said. "But yes, we never changed the settings after we merged our accounts." "Good. Tonight, I'll pull the metadata, timestamps, IP addresses, screenshots. If there's a duplicate, we'll find where it's been sent, who signed for it, hotel check-ins." I drove home with a quiet that felt like assembling tools. At the house, Mason was grease-stained and humming, flipping chicken on the grill like a man competent in easy domesticity. He poured wine and placed a plate in front of me with a smile that was meant to diffuse whatever storm he suspected might be rolling in. "You were quiet last night," he said. "Just tired," I lied. He nodded and went back to the grill. I ate, watched the way the light caught the sweat at his hairline, the small twitch at his thumb. He moved like a man who could compartmentalize love, work, mistakes, and not allow the boxes to touch. That night, when he showered, I sat at his laptop and waited. Messages synced automatically. The screen lit up like a second moon in the dark. There it was, a thread named For Closure. The sender, Melissa S. I scrolled. Her messages were clipped, his answers were measured. The tone was businesslike, but also intimate in the way people who rehearse betrayal make things intimate. She wrote, I'm leaving for LA next week. You promised to make things right. He replied, I will. You'll have the proof. She'll see it too. Then another from her. Then make sure she does. The final item was a photo. The same matte black box, the same satin ribbon, the same waxy gold seal. His message under it, duplicate confirmed. His email signature stuck below with the company logo and his name. He'd sent it to her himself. He'd orchestrated the setup. He'd handed her the script. My humiliation wasn't a spontaneous act by a scorned ex. It was a carefully choreographed insurance policy. Let her be the villain. Let me be the target. Clean exit. No confession necessary. When the shower stopped, I closed the laptop and slid it back like nothing had happened. My hands shook, but my voice didn't when he came out, towel over his shoulders and steam in his hair. You okay? He asked, genuine concern a shape on his face. I'm fine, I said. Just thinking about your birthday. It was memorable. He smiled, satisfied. She just wants attention. Forget her. But I wasn't thinking about her anymore. I was thinking about how he used people like props. How he wrote my name on that envelope with his own hand. How he thought paper could absolve him. The next morning, I called Anna. I need a backup, I told her. Everything. Screenshots, timestamps, receipts, quietly. Planning to confront him? She asked. Not yet, I said. He made my humiliation into a show. I plan to make a stage out of his. She laughed, a short, precise sound. Okay, we'll build it, but be careful. Careful was a relative term. I felt like a sculptor chip by chip exposing a statue of someone I once trusted. Each small reveal would have to be precise, surgical, not an accusation. Proof. Over the week, I mapped out what I could control. I saved emails. I printed hotel confirmations. I ordered certified copies of the boutique receipts under the guise of a price dispute. I watched him in the small domestic theater of our home, the way he paused at certain songs on the radio, the way he avoided my gaze when I reached for the cereal. Every seemingly trivial movement became a data point. Between the documents, a portrait emerged. Not an affair built in a single night, but planned gestures meant to protect a narrative. A duplicate present was not a mistake. It was an insurance policy. The card with my name? A prop. The receipt in the box? A breadcrumb. The she who walked in that night was cast, rehearsed, handed cues. I slept less. When I did, my dreams were mechanics, hinges, locks, numbers, names. I rehearsed conversations in the shower, interrogations in the closet, the exact way I would return a smile at a party and let everyone else speak for me. Anna fed me data in small, steady packets, IP logs, arrival timestamps for emails, a hotel folio that matched the receipt down to the minute. One evening, Anna showed up at the house with a manila folder and an expression like a verdict. This is everything I could pull without tripping any alerts, she said. Screenshots, metadata, the works, look here. Emails time-stamped while his phone was registered at the Royalton. Look here, the boutique's transaction log with a duplicate entry and a signature. I took the folder and spread the papers on the kitchen table. Each page was a small knife, and I ran my finger along the edges instead of looking directly at the content. Evidence is strange that way. It can make you feel powerful, and it can make you feel unbearably small. You're going to make a stage out of his, Anna said softly. What's the first act? I looked at the documents, then at Anna, then at the rain sliding down the window. We don't start with accusations, I said. We start with facts, silence, and then we let the facts do the talking. She nodded. Perfect. Quiet. Then quiet becomes the loudest thing in the room. I folded the papers back into the folder and slid it into my bag. There are moments when you realize a person is not who you thought they were. What follows is not always rage. Sometimes it's a logistics problem. Who kept the receipt? Who stamped the envelope? Who paid the bill? He had made a show of my humiliation. I intended to return the favor professionally, precisely, and publicly enough that the audience he curated would have to watch the truth land. I met his eye across the kitchen later while he chopped vegetables, unaware of the stagecraft being laid out under his roof. He smiled at me, small and ordinary and utterly blind. I gave him a smile back that didn't reach my eyes. Inside my bag, the manila folder waited like a promise. Outside, the rain turned into a steady, small percussion. The city moved on. People went to work and forgot to check their email sometimes. People held their secrets in neat drawers and called them safe. I was learning the addresses of those drawers. The thing about building a stage is that it takes time. You line up lights, you cue music, you rehearse exits. And when the curtains finally open, everyone remembers where they were the night the show started. I had the receipts, the timestamps, the pictures, the signatures. I had a chorus of small truths that, when sung together, would make his story impossible to perform. And I had the one quiet realization that kept me steady every morning. Humiliation is public. Revenge can be if you plan it like a production. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not my sister, not my mom, not even the friends who would have taken my side before I finished the sentence. Because silence, once you've sat with it long enough, becomes a kind of armor. And I wasn't done building mine yet, so I practiced smiling. I made the bed every morning like someone who believed in small domestic rituals. I kissed Mason on the cheek when he left for work, the motion timed and soft. I emptied the junk drawer in the kitchen, filed the papers, returned overdue library books, replaced the broken bulb on the porch. All the things that say, I am fine. I wore the routine like a costume. It helped me keep the face that everyone expected. Because this time, I wasn't reacting. I was planning. The first rule of a plan is control the narrative. Don't let other people decide the beats of your story. You tell them piece by piece when the timing is right. So I called Natalie. Natalie was one of the newer realtors at Mason's office. We weren't close, but she'd always been kind at holiday parties, always noticing details others let slide. She had a soft professional way of saying things that made people answer without feeling interrogated. Hey, Natalie, I said, putting on sunshine. I'm putting together a slideshow for Mason's belated birthday brunch. Just a little surprise. Mind helping with a few photos from the office party? Her answer was immediate. Of course, I have a ton. He'll love it. Which meant she would send everything. The curated images and the candid shots. The ones meant for public smiling and the ones that caught people mid-breath. Timestamps included. That afternoon, a folder appeared in my inbox. Over 100 photos stacked like evidence. I scrolled, slow and careful, like flipping pages in a book you already knew would change you. And there it was, the moment the black gift box hit the table. A perfect angle. My name visible on the envelope. Mason's face caught in a strange half expression, like surprise folding into calculation. I saved the image and then opened the one before it. In that earlier frame, I saw the restaurant manager standing near the bar. His head turned, eyes locked on the woman in the black dress. He had the look of someone who sees too much and says less. He'd seen everything. We needed a witness. I needed someone who had seen the choreography and could testify to the cue. So the next day, I went back to the restaurant. I dressed in plain jeans, flats, no makeup. I wanted to look like someone who'd already found the answers, not a woman chasing ghosts. The bell chimed when I walked in. The servers glanced up. The place smelled of lemon oil and reheated garlic. Noise bubbled like a pot left on low. The manager was behind the counter, salt and pepper hair, polite reserves in the set of his jaw. When I asked if he was working the night of Mason's dinner, he squinted at me in a way that suggested he remembered the face even if he couldn't place the name. Yes, ma'am, he said. Everything all right? I kept my voice calm. I wanted to ask about the woman with the black box. Did she make a reservation? He hesitated, then shook his head. No, she asked to be seated with your group, said she was invited. By who? I pushed, gentle. A pause, the kind of pause that holds small decisions. He showed me a text, the manager admitted, said your husband told her to come at dessert. That was the stitch I needed. It closed the seam. I thanked him and left a tip in his hand. Not for the information alone, but for the honesty. Small favors, consistent. Back at home, I called Anna. If Natalie was the person who would give me photographs, Anna was the one who would make the photographs mean something. She'd transitioned from marketing into digital forensics years back and kept a small freelance practice. She liked puzzles and she liked being right. Print everything, I told her. The emails, the credit card statements, the reservation log, the text, and that photo Natalie sent. Put them in order. I've already formatted them into a timeline, Anna said. The way people who do this kind of work speak. Fast, efficient, no room for theatrics. Do you want a slideshow? Yes, but not for me. She didn't ask who it was for. She knew. The next 2 nights were quiet, not empty. The house hummed with preparation. We printed duplicates, highlighted the dates, compared handwriting. We matched the tiny curl in his S on the boutique engraving to the S in the note he'd left me last year. Even small things line up when someone is deliberate. Anna compared the engraving on the monogrammed watch, the one I'd given him, to the underside of the silver frame she'd photographed from the ex's box. The same delicate work, same font, the same small imperfection in the loop of the M, MS to LDS. It was worse than a lie. It was a pattern. 2 names, 1 story stitched to make one person the villain and someone else the punchline. All that remained was the setup, the reveal, the stage. I chose Friday morning to lay the trap. Mason was in the shower when I opened the calendar app on his iPad and created a faux invitation. Birthday recap and thank you toast, backyard, 11 a.m. I invited the people who had been at the dinner, his sister, Natalie, a few coworkers, enough to make the event warm and ordinary, no one suspicious, just friends and family. Then I rang Natalie. Would you mind helping me with the projector? Just something simple, a little video for Mason's thank you speech. Absolutely, she said. I'll bring my laptop. Perfect. The backyard needed work. The rain had left the ground muddy. I laid down rugs, set up folding chairs, strung fairy lights from the porch beams. I arranged lemonade. In pitchers and finger foods on trays that looked like someone had pulled them straight from a lifestyle magazine. It was the kind of scene Mason liked. Domestic, composed, flattering. The night before, I practiced the toast. Not the words, the delivery, the short sentences, the small pauses, the timing where a vulnerable laugh would look sincere. The moment I handed the mic to Natalie like it was spontaneous. The curated moment where everyone would look at the screen and think, how sweet. I tied the satin ribbon from the original box around my wrist that morning. A private talisman, a reminder that the smallest things can hold weight. Mason arrived wearing khakis and a grin that could sell insurance. He kissed my cheek and asked if I'd done all of this myself. The question was rhetorical. He soaked it in like someone who lived for compliments. I let him. I let the gratitude wash over him so it would make him soft. At 11:27, I tapped my fork against a glass. The clink cut through the chatter. Heads turned toward me. I felt the nerves tighten like strings. Hi, everyone, I began. Just a quick word before the video plays. Short sentences, slow breath. Thank you for coming, for being here that night, for being part of Mason's life. I spoke about loyalty and small gestures. I used words that sounded like closure and carried an edge, not angry, not pleading, clear. Then I turned to Natalie. Would you mind? She clicked and the slideshow started. Faces, candles, laughter, the group photo, a slice of cake, then the black box in crisp digital clarity. The camera lingered on the envelope. My name, the receipt, the folded note, the close-up shot of the manager watching her, images that, when stacked, became a sentence. Someone sounded a sharp noise, a gasping intake of breath. Mason stood slowly, as if the floor had shifted. His face unmade itself in layers, confusion first, then a frantic recalculation where he searched for control. What is this? He asked, voice small and raw, but the manager stepped forward from behind the porch. He'd agreed to come that morning, said he wanted his name to be in the record of who told the truth. He looked older than in the photos, real and kind and blunt. I remember, he said, to no one in particular and then to all of us. She showed me a text, said your husband told her to come at dessert. The slideshow moved to a still capture. Mason's email signature down to the last punctuation. The words duplicate confirmed. His sister backed away, hand to her mouth. Natalie went still, Laptop forgotten. Conversations frayed into silence. My voice was low, controlled. You used my name, I said. You used her. You made my humiliation into a performance so you could walk away without owning anything. He tried to speak. Tried again. Each syllable tasted like an apology in rehearsal. Finally, he said, I thought you'd understand. Understand. The word had weight then and weight now. I thought about the nights I had given him the benefit of the doubt, the soft explanations I'd accepted because I wanted kindness more than conflict. I had believed the story he handed me because it was easier, but I didn't need his understanding. I needed consequences. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I let the silence do the work. People hate a vacuum. They fill it with judgment. They pick sides. They make the absent confess through murmurs. This was not the place for a spectacle of anger. It was a place for the truth to sit in the room and be heavy, for facts to take up more air than he could manage. He sank into a chair as if someone had removed the stage beneath him. He looked around, frantic for allies, but the assembly had turned its gaze away from him. The people he'd curated to be witnesses were now the audience of his unraveling. I picked up my glass and drank. The lemonade was too sweet. The ribbon around my wrist felt like a small, steady rope. There are different kinds of power. One is loud. It roars and demands attention. Another is quiet. It makes people look at what they did and realize they can't unsee it. I chose the quiet kind. When the last image faded and the laptop went dark, someone started to clap. Not in celebration. It was the sound of collective release, like a held breath finally letting go. The manager crossed back over the porch, head down, doing his job, offering a mundane apology about interrupting someone's day. Life rearranged itself around a new fact. Mason looked at me, broken and small in a way that made me feel both vindicated and unexpectedly sorrowful. The man I had loved was still there, only the shape of him had changed. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. The armor of silence had become a blade of facts. I didn't want his confession as much as I wanted the truth to be visible to those who had witnessed my shame. I wanted the narrative to align with reality. And in that sunlight in my backyard, with fairy lights and folding chairs and a projector blinking off, reality had shown its face. He would try to explain later. He would try to put the fragments back together. But the fragments now bore fingerprints and dates and signatures. I had staged a small theater for the truth. The audience had watched. The actor had been exposed. It was not mercy I sought, it was clarity. And with clarity came a kind of freedom that felt, in the beginning, like a slow, careful breath. The silence that followed was the kind that rearranges a room. It stretched between people, rewiring air and light, making every sound that tried to exist inside it feel intrusive. The projector's glow painted the side of Mason's face in cold light. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. Just the flicker of a jaw clenching and unclenching, like he was trying to chew through the truth itself. Someone shifted. A plastic cup crushed under a heel, the pop. Sharp and accidental, a small explosion that made everyone flinch. I didn't move, didn't speak, I just looked at him. He seemed smaller now, the kind of small that happens when pretense deflates. The backyard I had staged, the fairy lights, the soft rugs, the lemonade sweating in glass pitchers, suddenly looked like a set from a film that had reached its final scene. The crowd, the props, the lighting, everything curated for his image was now collapsing around him, and he knew it. Everyone knew it. His sister was the first to find her voice. "Is this real?" she asked. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried like a blade. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Behind me, the screen answered for me, a frozen image of the receipt, my name on the envelope, the boutique timestamp glowing like a digital confession. The slideshow still hummed softly, looping through evidence with almost tender indifference. Natalie moved first. She stepped back from the laptop, her face pale, hands trembling slightly. "Mason," she whispered, "is this why she came that night? You told me she was stalking you." He turned toward her, scrambling for a lifeline. No. This is out of context." "Is it?" I said. My voice sounded strange to me. Too calm. Too steady. It wasn't that I didn't feel the hurt. It was that the hurt had settled into a new form. Cold. Focused. I'd already spent my tears in private. You wrote my name on that card, I said slowly. You told her to bring it. You booked the hotel with her the weekend you told me to visit my sister. You paid for both boxes, one for me, one for her. He blinked, words stuttering out like fragments of a sentence he hadn't rehearsed. It was a mistake. A low murmur rippled through the guests, an uneasy shuffle of disbelief. Then Anna stepped forward. Until that moment, she'd stayed near the edge of the yard, still and quiet, blending in like a neighbor who had wandered over. Now she crossed the space between us and laid a flash drive on the table. The silver casing gleamed under the fairy lights. That drive has the full email thread, she said, voice level. From his iCloud, screenshots, metadata, login history, everything. The noise Mason made wasn't a word. It was air leaving a balloon. His face cracked, the collapse visible in his shoulders, and the slight tremor that ran through his hand as he tried to steady himself. It was like watching scaffolding fall in slow motion, bolts giving way one by one. You didn't just cheat, I said. You orchestrated my humiliation. You made her the weapon, and you put my name on the blade. The crowd stayed frozen. No one reached for their phones. No one left. They just sat there, bearing witness. One of his coworkers, the same man who'd laughed that night at the restaurant when the box appeared, now stared at the ground as if it could swallow him whole. Mason's eyes darted around, desperate for a familiar face. He reached for a wineglass but missed it completely, his fingers brushing air. I just didn't know how to end it, he said finally. That made someone, Natalie, let out a sharp, bitter laugh. So you staged a scene to humiliate your wife? He spun toward her. No, I thought if she saw the box, she'd walk away. He meant me, the woman whose name he'd written, whose silence he'd counted on. He thought the sight of my own name on a stranger's gift would break me quietly, without confrontation, without noise. He wanted a clean exit, a tragedy people would gossip about once and then forget. Instead, I had written a different ending. I walked over to the table, picked up the card, the one from the black box. Its paper was thick, soft, luxurious. I lifted it so the silver embossing caught the light and shimmered for every pair of eyes to see. You used me as the envelope for your exit strategy, I said, and then I tore it in half. The sound was soft, but in that moment, it was thunder. Paper fibers tearing under steady pressure, the rip echoing across the yard louder than his protest could ever be. He took a step forward, hand half raised, voice cracking. Lila, don't, I said. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, it did. But grief, once it burns long enough, turns into clarity. Pain can sharpen you if you let it. I had let it. I nodded toward Anna. She opened her laptop, clicked a file, and the speakers filled the air with his voice. A voicemail. Familiar cadence, familiar tone. His voice spilling into the space between us, confident in its secrecy. She'll see the gift, his recorded self said. She'll get the message. I just need you to deliver it. Clean. Gasps rippled through the guests. The wind stirred the string lights, making them sway, the bulbs swinging gently like shocked witnesses. Someone dropped another cup. Lemonade darkened the grass. Mason's hands flew to his face, but there was nowhere to hide. I turned to the crowd. Thank you for coming, I said, calm as breath. You've seen what I needed you to see. I won't be staying. Then I looked at Mason one last time. You built your exit on my name. I just burned the bridge behind you. And I walked back toward the house. No one stopped me. The murmur behind me rose and broke like waves hitting rock. The projector shut off with a pop, the screen folding in on itself. The fairy lights still swayed, their reflections flickering across the glass door as I stepped inside. The temperature changed. Cooler air, quieter. I could hear my own heartbeat again. It was steady, strange, after weeks of chaos, to feel my pulse not racing. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and ash from the grill. The hum of the refrigerator replaced the outside chatter. I didn't pack. Not yet. I didn't scream or throw anything or break dishes. I just sat on the edge of the bed, the one I'd made that morning out of habit, and untied the satin ribbon from my wrist. It slipped free with a whisper. I held it in my palm, the fabric warm from my skin. In the dim light, it no longer looked like silk. It looked like something finished, like the end of a chapter when the page has already cooled from the touch of ink. I thought about the people still outside, their voices layering over one another, trying to make sense of what they'd witnessed. Mason's voice among them, explaining, deflecting, maybe even crying, but none of it mattered anymore. Truth once seen can't be unseen. I stood, opened the drawer, and placed the ribbon inside, folding it neatly over itself. The simple act felt ceremonial. Closure doesn't always come with grand gestures. Sometimes it's the quiet motion of setting something down and meaning it. I glanced once more toward the backyard through the window. The guests were dispersing now, their figures moving like slow shadows under the fairy lights. Mason stood alone near the table, his hands in his hair, his posture bent. The same string lights that had once made him glow now outlined the hollowness around him. I turned away. There's a sound that only happens when a house exhales, the creak of wood, the settling of air after tension. I listened to it. It sounded like release. I walked down the hall, trailing my fingertips along the wall, memorizing the texture. Not as a goodbye, as proof. Proof that I could leave a space without it defining me. When I reached the doorway, I paused, looked back at the bed, the dresser, the faint outline of the torn card lying on the floor where I'd dropped it. 2 halves, face down, no longer legible. Perfect. Outside, I heard car doors closing, engines starting, the faint murmur of people leaving behind the scene of someone else's reckoning. Tomorrow there would be stories. People would whisper. Maybe some would pity him. Maybe some would call me cruel. Let them. Every narrative needs its villain. I had finally decided which role belonged to me. I opened the front door. The air was damp and cool, carrying the faint metallic scent of rain on concrete. The horizon over the neighborhood was blushing into dusk. I stepped onto the porch and breathed in. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like truth. Raw and steady, without ornament. Somewhere behind me, a light went out in the house. The automatic timer. Perfect timing. I walked down the steps and onto the sidewalk. Each step felt lighter. The ribbon still left a faint indentation on my wrist, a pale line that would fade but never completely disappear. Proof again, of weight once carried. As I reached the corner, I heard the last sound from the backyard, the projector being unplugged, a faint click, and then nothing, just quiet. And for the first time in months, that quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. The next morning, the backyard was still. Dew glazed the grass, soft and silver, turning every overturned chair into a small sculpture of aftermath. The air had that damp quiet that follows a storm, the kind that hums with memory instead of sound. The torn halves of the card were still there, just as I'd left them. One piece lay face down on the patio brick, edges curling slightly like it wanted to hide. The other was half soaked from the night air, ink bleeding faintly into the paper. The projector was gone. Anna had packed it up without a word. She'd known what I needed: space, not comfort. Silence, not sympathy. Mason had never come inside that night. I'd heard his footsteps on the porch, slow and uncertain, a ghost of a rhythm pacing through the boards. Once, maybe twice. The sound stopped near the door, but no knock followed. He must have known there was no door left for him to walk through, not anymore. By 9 a.m., I had already called the bank. There's something strangely cleansing about saying the words, "I need to freeze the joint account," effective immediately. The woman on the other end didn't ask questions. She just guided me through the steps, methodical, polite, efficient. The click of keys, the quiet hum of confirmation. When she said, "It's done," it felt like a lock sliding into place. I opened a new account in my own name, transferred my half, set up new auto pays, added alerts for every transaction over $50. Each ping would now be a signal, a kind of shield, a reminder that control had changed hands. Then I called a lawyer. Not the dramatic, made-for-TV type with courtroom theatrics. No, this woman was sharper than that. Retired, measured, working from a modest home office in a quiet suburb near Matthews. Her name was Elaine. Her voice was calm, low, lined with experience that didn't need to prove itself. When she picked up, I said the words as simply as I could. My husband staged a public event to humiliate me using a fake gift, but the money trail ties back to him. She didn't sound surprised. "Bring me the receipts, the photo, and a copy of the video," she said. "If he used marital funds to deceive, manipulate, or coerce, we may be looking at fraud, financial or emotional." So I did. Her house smelled faintly of cedar and paper. Sunlight cut across her desk in strips, landing on piles of neatly stacked files. I handed her everything: receipts, printouts, screenshots, the slideshow. She flipped through them slowly, pen tapping the margin of each page. Her eyes narrowed at the photo of the boutique logo. "We've got leverage," she said finally. That was the word that stayed with me. Not revenge, not justice, leverage. The ability to choose what happened next and not have to ask permission. That night, Mason came home. I heard the key before I saw him, the slow turn of metal in a lock that used to open to trust. He stepped in quietly, the way a person might walk into their own funeral, careful, unsure, pretending they still belonged in the space where everyone knew they didn't. His clothes were wrinkled, hair uncombed, eyes hollow from a night without sleep. For a moment he stood there, hands shoved in his pockets like a teenager caught after curfew. "Can we talk?" he asked finally, his voice small. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a mug of tea cooling beside a spiral notebook. I'd started journaling again, not because I wanted to remember, but because I wanted to translate chaos into sentences. Order. Meaning. "You can talk," I said. "I'm not promising I'll listen." He sat across from me, his fingers drummed against the chair, a nervous rhythm. I watched his hands, the same ones that had signed hotel check-ins, wrapped ribbon, written my name like a prayer and a curse. "I messed up," he said. "I know I did." I didn't respond. The clock on the wall ticked between us like a metronome counting down his excuses. I thought... He paused, swallowing. "If I made you walk away, it wouldn't be my fault. That I wouldn't have to be the bad guy." "You weren't afraid of being the bad guy," I said quietly. "You were afraid of looking like the bad guy." The words hit him harder than I expected. He flinched, eyes darting downward as if the linoleum might offer him an escape hatch. His mouth opened again. "Do you hate me?" I thought about it, about the years behind that question, about the anniversaries and apologies, the small lies I'd mistaken for care. "No," I said finally. "That would mean I still feel something for you." He looked at the table. His thumb brushed a small coffee ring I hadn't noticed before. "Is there anything I can do to fix it?" "No," I said. "But there is something you can do to finish it." I slid an envelope across the table, plain, heavy. Inside was the paperwork Elaine had drafted. Voluntary separation. Agreement to relinquish any claims to the boutique purchases, the marital accounts, and the portion of home equity I'd built before we married. No loopholes, no gray areas. He opened it slowly, eyes scanning the lines. His face drained of color. "You're serious. You wanted me out," I said. "I just took the script and rewrote the ending." He nodded once. The sound of the pen clicking open was small but final. He signed. The last curve of his signature trembled at the N in Shepherd. My name, not his. It felt symbolic, the ink drying as if sealing something much larger than paper. When he left that night, he didn't take the black box. Maybe he thought I'd burned it. Maybe he didn't want to touch it again. Either way, it stayed, top shelf of the closet, exactly where I'd put it, untouched. What I had burned wasn't the box. It was the illusion, the story he thought I'd keep telling for him. A week later, Anna came over. We sat on the porch in the soft warmth of late afternoon, iced tea sweating in tall glasses. The air was thick with cicadas. Their rhythm made conversation feel slower, stretched. For once, the laughter between us didn't sound like release. It sounded genuine. She brought back the projector, set it gently on the table, and handed me a small flash drive. "Keep it," she said, "in case you ever forget how strong you were." I smiled. "I won't," I said, but I took it anyway. Later that night, when the house had settled and the neighborhood went dark, I opened the closet. The black box sat there like an unspoken sentence. I lifted it down carefully, opened it one last time, removed the ribbon, closed the lid, for good. Then I lit a candle, the same kind from that birthday dinner, the warm amber kind that burns slow, flickering like it's remembering. The flame caught the edge of the box's glossy lid, made it shimmer for a heartbeat before softening. I watched the light shift, warm and steady. I wrapped the ribbon around my wrist again. Not as armor this time, not as a wound, but as proof. Proof that I saw everything and chose not to disappear. Proof that I didn't lose. Proof that he never really knew who he was dealing with. They thought that box, that night, that envelope with my name, would be my undoing. They thought humiliation would silence me, but the truth was quieter and far more lasting. The box had carried my name to shame me, They didn't know it would also carry everything I needed to prove him wrong. I blew out the candle. The smoke curled upward, thin and graceful, like the final line of a story that no longer needed to be told aloud. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.